Hello and welcome to the Circularists. It's been quiet for a little while, but I am so thrilled to be talking today with Charles Wellington Morgan Jr. from Liberia. Now, I don't know about you, but we don't often hear about Liberia. Liberia is a country in West Africa nestled between the Ivory Coast and the Atlantic Ocean with an incredible history and heritage and story. So it is the only country in Africa that was founded by free slaves from America. Go research and read for yourselves. It's a fascinating journey for this country. And I am thrilled, Charles, to be talking to you today. You are the founder of Four Beach, Liberia. I'm really excited to explore your work. So over to you. Tell us what you're doing and all about the richness, the biodiversity hotspot that is Liberia.
Thank you very much, Karen. I am honored to be on your show.
Yes.
Um I'm grateful for the platform given me to share the story of Liberia, to also share my story. My name is Charles Wellington Morgan Jr. I am a Liberian. I am a climate justice advocate. I am a youth advocate. I am also a United Nations Sustainable Development Goals advocate. As I said, I'm from Liberia. Liberia is a beautiful country on the west coast of Africa. Liberia is nestled between, on the north, you have Guinea, on the east, you have Ivory Coast, on the west, you have Sierra Leone, and on the south, you have the Atlantic Ocean. Liberia is the 46th biodiversity hotspot in the world and also the second in Africa after the Congo Basin forest, which is the Upper Guinean forest. And Liberia just recently have been made the number one surfing destination in Africa and the number 10 surfing destination in the world. Liberia is also a country with many natural resources and also a huge historical and cultural heritage. Liberia is a country of many welcoming people and a country of many open arms and hospitable people.
It sounds beautiful. So, being a biodiversity hotspot, what are the threats to your region? What are the threats to that biodiversity locally and globally? If you could help us understand that.
So as we know, climate change have been a a huge threat to our world, and know that both people and planets are feeling the effects of climate change. And biodiversity is not an exception. As you know, all around the world, as scientists have been speaking, the climate is changing, but we are seeing the effects all around the world. And for the biodiversity in Liberia, it has been affected hugely by climate change, even though it is contributing immensely to tackle climate change. Why I'm saying this is because in Liberia, there's a huge deforestation of
Oh,
the forest. Deforestation is one of the challenges that is affecting the fight against climate change. So because deforestation go on in this forest because um, many indigenous people that live in these forest communities depend on this forest for their livelihood.
right.
So they don't have any alternative, they don't have any option but to depend on the forest. So they cut down the trees, they burn charcoal to be able to they burn charcoal to be able to get fire to be able to cook. They also depend on the forest for medication, they depend on the forest for many things. And also it also affects it affects all of the species that live in the forest.
I just want to jump in there and ask you, Charles, who's clearing the forest and for what purpose? what companies and businesses are clearing the forest?
But
Right.
on a huge scale, yeah, it's being carried out by logging companies. It's being carried out by logging companies. It's being carried out by mining companies. Because Liberia is a very rich country. Liberia is one of the richest countries in Africa. Liberia have almost all the natural resources in the world, ranging from gold, diamond, uranium, crude oil, talking about bauxite, talking
Right.
about um, um, talking about stone and natural gems. We have almost all the natural resources. So because of um, the mining, illegal mining, and also how you call it because of illicit mining, some of these things, these are some of the reasons for the deforestation. Some of these companies
Right.
carry out deforestation to undergo their aim of carrying on illicit mining. So these are some of the
Ah,
factors. And also, everyday Liberians depend on the forest for their livelihood. They don't have any alternative. You
right.
understand?
Right.
And this forest I'm talking about, and one fact is that Africa produces just less than 4% of the global carbon emissions annually. You
Right.
understand? But
Yes.
Africa is the most affected
Right.
continent that
Yes.
is affected by climate change.
Yes. This is the inequality of climate change. Okay. So mining and logging, because they want to get access to the rich diversity of
the rich
minerals that are in the earth under the forest, right?
and also they want to use the logs. Liberia have huge forests, as I told you. Liberia have about 40% of the Upper Guinea Forest, which is the 46th biodiversity hotspot in the world, and the number
Right.
two in all of Africa. So this forest is very much huge. And sometimes the deforestation is carried on because, as I said, there's no alternative for Liberians, you understand?
Right.
But because Liberians depend on the forest for their livelihood, about
Right.
79% of Liberians or more depend on the forest for their livelihood. You understand?
Right.
They depend on the forest for their clean water. They depend on the forest for their food, for their medication, for
Yes.
for they depend on the forest for their living, to cut down trees. They cut down trees to burn firewood. They also cut down trees to burn charcoal. You understand? To sell,
Yes.
because we don't have access to renewable energy. We don't have
Yeah.
access
Yeah.
to the, required technologies that are needed for
Right.
clean energy.
Would it be fair to say, so the population of Liberia is 5.2 million. Would it be fair to say that the indigenous peoples that are using the forest for charcoal, for cooking, for heat, or whatever, would it be fair to say that their use of the forest for those purposes is not going to cause devastation because there's time for
No,
replenish
it's
or
not going to affect the forest equal to that of the companies, the what you call it, the mining companies and the logging companies.
right?
These are
This is
very huge companies that bring very huge machines to
yes,
carry on logging activities, to carry
right,
on mining activities,
right.
and
So this is huge scale
they also
destruction,
affect the yeah, it caused destruction because
right?
for the mining, they use dynamite, they use other chemicals that cause
Oh,
explosion, and
wow,
also it cause it affects the biodiversity within the
right,
area because all of the ecological species that live within that area are affected. The
right,
water becomes contaminated.
right.
And sometimes there are oil spilled on them. Sometimes there are what you call it, the dynamite, it causes explosion, and it destroys all of their habitats.
It's so destructive, and I imagine a lot of the wildlife will flee, from the shock and the threat of the deforestation. So you'll lose birds. It will fall silent. Life will fall silent over time because of this destructive mining and deforestation activity.
It also affects lives too, because just recently in Liberia, in recent years, there have been times where some indigenous village, some indigenous village Like for example, some counties in Liberia, like for example, in Grand Cape Mount County, there's an area, one of the richest area in Liberia where mining activity is going on. It's called King Jaw, which is in Grand Cape Mount County. Can you imagine? This area I'm talking about is one of the richest areas. It's close to Sierra Leone. It's one of the closest areas to Sierra Leone. You understand?
Right.
And they have gold and diamonds. Just imagine how Sierra Leone is rich with diamonds. You understand? So just know that Liberia and Sierra Leone are on the same land scale. So
Okay.
all of the things that are in Sierra Leone are what? Ultimately, they are definitely in Liberia. It might not
Yes.
be on the same scale.
Right.
But I'm just trying to tell you the amount of minerals these people take from the ground by carrying on the the mining. You
Right.
understand? They carry
Yes.
on all of these minerals and they cause chemical spills into the
Right.
waterways, into the
Yes.
rivers, into the
Yes.
creeks of indigenous communities. And
Mm.
sometimes the fish die in the water. Sometimes the people don't have source of safe drinking water and it affects the communities. Liberia is a very unique country. As I said, Liberia have the second biodiversity hotspot in Africa after the Congo Basin forest, which is the Upper Guinean forest. And this forest is home to many endangered species, including the pygmy hippopotamus, which is a animal, a different species of the hippopotamus, which can only be found in Liberia, unless you take it from Liberia to carry any nation, but it is endangered to Liberia. It is currently on the $500 of the Liberian currency. This is one of the endangered species. And these many endangered species they face threats because of deforestation. And they are on the brink of going to extinction because of deforestation. And also Liberia forests contribute after the Congo Basin forest. Liberia forest is the second forest to contribute to the global fight against climate change. But there's a recent study that showed that 9 out of 10 Liberians are affected by flooding and face rates of what migration, climate migration, because of the effects of climate change. So we are calling on the international communities, we are calling on the governments of the world to ensure that developed and underdeveloped countries have access to technological resources like seawalls, like technologies, early warning systems, like other like renewable energy,
Right.
so that we'll be able to adapt to climate change. Because most developed countries have all of the adaptation resources they need. But we underdeveloped countries like Liberia and many African nations and nations around the world, we do not have the resources that we need. That is why we are for Beach Liberia are going to an alternative, which is nature-based solutions to be able to protect our people from coastal flooding, because we don't have access to seawalls or dikes.
Right.
We don't
Right.
have resources to build such. That is why we are using nature-based solutions. But
Right.
we want the world to respect and to acknowledge our contribution to the world. If our forest is the second in Africa that is helping to mitigate the global carbon emission.
Mm.
Therefore, there should be benefits. There should be climate finance for these indigenous communities,
Right.
and there should be benefits for this country that owns this forest. You
Right.
understand? All other
Yes.
countries that are contributing to the fight against climate change. We
Right.
just we just understand that there have been 100 billion set aside for climate finance, but there is always bureaucracy for poorer nations or underdeveloped nations to get access to this funding. So
Right.
it's a right for us to own these, for us to get these fundings. It's not something
Right.
that we are begging for. It's our right because the world depends on us. The global
Mm.
north is not I'm sorry to say this, but the global north has contributed immensely to the what you call it, to the pollution of our
Of
world.
course. Yes.
It's a
Yes.
fact because, as we know, the
Yes.
industrial revolution play
Yes.
a very huge part in the developmental aspect of the global north.
Right.
And those are some of the reasons that led to the changing of the climate. You
Yes.
understand? And
Yes.
can you believe that up to now, nations like Liberia and other poorer nations have problem with stable electricity, even though we have more than 7 major rivers in Liberia? We need to tap into the use of our rivers. We're talking about renewable energy. We need to
Right.
get the so that we'll be able to have renewable energy instead of depending on coal and fossil fuels.
Hydropowered renewable energy. Yes.
Yes. So we need developed nations to give us renewable energy and technology.
Right.
There have been some nations trying, like one of the nations for the United Kingdom, Ireland, have been trying in Liberia here. Ireland gave some money for conservation of the forest in Liberia, but the money that is given, the indigenous communities, the people don't even receive they don't receive benefits. Sometimes there's a program called Rare Plus in Liberia where they say they want to find a subsidy or alternative for the people killing bushmeat and also for the people cutting the forest. You understand? They say they put the people on payments, but this payment doesn't even come on time. You understand? There are no
These,
smart. There's no climate smart agriculture. We need climate smart agriculture in our country. We need these resources that will be able to adapt to what? The climate crisis that is affecting us. Africa is hugely affected by climate change more than any other continent. And therefore, we only produce less than 4%. And we are also contributing. We have two big forests, two immense forests that are contributing to the global fight of climate change, which is the Congo Basin forest, the Upper
yes.
Guinean forest, and and even many other forests. But these are just the two what you call it rainforests. So we need developed nations to give us access to renewable energy and other resources that will be able to adapt to the climate crisis.
You know, climate justice is common sense in so many ways because in Liberia you have some of the biggest lungs remaining on the planet that are carbon
Certainly,
sinks that will mitigate and offset, the risks
certainly,
caused by climate change, right?
certainly,
At the same time as you are home to one of the biggest pair of lungs on the planet that is keeping us all safe,
certainly,
your people are struggling with the basics of food. So I want to talk
certainly.
about the West Bank. You have an area called the West Bank. I believe that you need running water and all sorts of infrastructure in place there. Is that still the case with the West Bank?
Certainly, we have a little bit of connection of running water here, but there is water insecurity here. There's food insecurity. It's
Right.
very, very high. You understand?
Yes.
And just can you imagine? Um, a lot of Liberians live on below $1 US a day.
Ugh,
A lot of Liberians live below $1 US a day. You understand? So the poverty rate here is very high. And as you said, our country is one of the global lungs. Our
yes.
country has one of the global lungs. We have about 40%. We have the highest percent of the second global lung in Africa. You understand?
Yes.
And country like ours, we don't have any benefit. As I told you, renewable energy. We need renewable energy. The world is talking about transitioning to renewable energy, but these renewable energy companies, they are the same what you call it the same global north companies. They are the ones that have access to the electric vehicles. They are the ones that have access to all of these renewable energy companies. And the
Right.
thing about it is the cobalt that they are making the electric vehicle with, it comes from Africa, which is from Congo.
Yeah.
You
Right.
understand?
Yes.
But all of the electric vehicles are being made and they are being manufactured in the same global north countries. You
Right.
understand? So without Africa, that means we cannot fight climate change. So
Hmm.
therefore, Africa should be able to get the necessary resources needed to fortify herself against
Right.
the climate crisis.
Right.
You understand?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's going to be no cobalt or minerals or mines for the mobile phones and the electric vehicles of the West if these nations
Certainly,
are underwater because of flooding. It's just going to
certainly,
grind to a halt. It's
cer-
senseless, right?
certainly. You get what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
was just talking about the carbon sinks, right? The as we know the lungs of the forest. As we know, Liberia is one of the global lungs of the world, and this forest It helps to what? It carry on carbon sequestration,
Right.
which mitigates the effects, which mitigate the pollution of carbon
Right.
emission.
Right.
So this forest carry on carbon sequestration is contributing to the world to protect other developed nations and other nations. You understand? But we are not getting any benefits for
Right.
the carbon sequestration.
For
You
the
understand?
role that,
And,
right.
and
For the,
also, as I said, the minerals, the natural resources, the, like many other African countries have many natural resources that have been taken from our nations. But you understand, we are not getting the necessary these are not begging for. These are things that that people owe us.
yes.
These things are owed
Yes.
to us. You understand?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
without our natural resources, there won't be any of all of these electric vehicles, all of these things that we're talking about Western development and
Mm,
also all of these development. You understand?
mhm.
So therefore, these finances, they are something that are owed us. They have to
Yes.
be paid to ensure that since we are also suffering from the climate disasters, to
Yep.
ensure that we adapt to it. You
Yep.
understand? Let's
Yep.
look at Liberia. 9 in 10 person, every 10 person are affected by coastal flooding. My family was affected by coastal flooding. Many other families were about to go in the rainy season. A lot of people who are destroyed by storm surges. And many other countries around Africa and around the world. As we just saw 2 days ago in Tanzania, the entire country was flooded. You understand?
Oh, yeah.
So these are everyday things that we are facing. It's not
Yes.
just something where you just see or report of just a certain number. These are not numbers. These are real people that
Right.
are being affected.
Right.
These
Right.
are not data. We are real people that are being affected by climate change, and therefore we should have the necessary resources and things that are required to
Yes.
help us to fortify ourselves because
Yes.
we don't have the technological resources, but we are helping with nature-based solutions. You
Absolutely.
understand?
It's a
And
quid
also
pro.
we have
Yes.
let's talk about the solar panel. Africa have the highest amount of sun more than any other area in the world.
Right.
So we are talking about solar panel. Why is it that solar panel is very expensive and African nations cannot have equal access to solar panels or they cannot have, you understand,
Right.
affordable access to solar panel? We are talking about climate equality. We are talking
Right.
about climate finance. We are talking about climate change, the fight against climate change.
Yes.
We all want to fight against climate change, but we don't want the bureaucracy. We don't want it to be biased. We want
Yes.
it to be equal because our
Right.
nations, we are the ones facing the brunt effects of climate change. And some
Right.
people are just taking it to be like data or taking it to be like going to conferences and 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 still supporting all of these big oil companies. No. So we have to take action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Okay. So now let's turn to your work. You're working for something better, something different. Tell us about For Beach Liberia. What's your mission? What's your vision here?
Or Beach Liberia is an environmental conservation organization in Liberia. It is an organization that is on a mission to plant 1 million coconut trees
One
in
million
all of
coconut
the
trees.
1 million coconut trees in the 9 coastal counties in Liberia.
Okay.
Why in the 9 coastal counties? In the 9 coastal counties to protect vulnerable coastal communities
Right.
from the adverse effects of climate change, including sea level rise, including coastal erosion, including storm surges, including landscape erosion, including flooding, etc. For, for Beach Liberia is also educating Liberians
Okay.
about climate change and plastic pollution. For
Okay.
Beach Liberia is also educating Liberians about taking sustainable actions to combat climate change. For Beach Liberia is also advocating for climate justice, climate equality in Liberia, and also for Beach Liberia is advocating for clean energy. and also for technological transfer of resources from developed nations to underdeveloped nations, including Liberia.
Your work could have huge impact and a huge positive impact on the well-being of Liberians. Who's helping you? Who's funding you? How are you going about this work? How many of you are doing this?
Each Liberia is an organization that was formed it was formed by young people, young Liberians.
Okay.
Steve S. Kuna, he is the executive director and the founder, and I am the co-founder. So for Beach Liberia, um, started this journey back in 2021. But
Mm.
before then, I had the vision of finding some of the remedies to tackle the effects of climate change in Liberia. This reason is because in 2017, my family members were affected by coastal flooding in
Oh,
an area called Nuku Town in
right.
Liberia.
I see.
My family members, they had to migrate from their
Right.
home that my mother grew up in Nuku Town on Popo Beach. They had to
Right.
migrate their home because of coastal flooding. The
I
school that
see.
my mother attended also called D12, a part of it was also wiped out because of coastal flooding.
Right.
So when this happened to my family back in 2017, I didn't know that it was a cause of climate change. I
Right.
didn't even know what climate change was.
Hmm.
It was after then that a friend of mine told me about climate change and told me to do research about climate change.
Right.
And when I went to do research, I discovered that what had affected my family previously was climate change.
Right.
So I decided that since this happened, how can I contribute to ensure that other families are not affected by the same
Hmm.
thing that
Right.
happened to mine? So I started to search for means in which I can contribute. I
Hmm.
firstly started to volunteer with many organizations. I volunteer with many NGOs. I
Hmm.
volunteer with an organization called Healthy Life International. I
Hmm.
volunteer with Conservation International. I volunteer with Blue Ocean,
Mm.
and I volunteer with the Marine Arctic Peace Sanctuary, which is
Hmm.
a subsidiary under the United Nations um, climate action team,
Right. Hmm.
and many other organizations.
Hmm.
And have also volunteered to organize action for climate in Liberia. Like
Right.
in 2020, we organized the Green March, the Green Environmental March, Liberia, the first of its kind
Right.
in Liberia. So we marched for the protection of the Upper Guinea Forest,
Ah.
which I just told you about because of
Mm.
the deforestation activities. We
Yes.
also marched for the establishment of the Environmental Code of Liberia. We also marched for the climate action for climate justice to be implemented in Liberia. We marched that our country, Liberia, will stay committed to our agreement on the Paris Climate Agreement. So
Right. Right.
we deliver a petition to the government of the Republic of Liberia through the then executive director of the Environmental Protection Agency, Professor Wilson Tappet, and our petition was delivered to the government.
Oh, I just want to interject there, if I can. Those marches, those reasons that you just gave, are they all reasons for the one single march, or did you march separately for each of those issues?
Those were reasons for one single march, but we
Right.
marched repeatedly with for those same
Okay.
reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask about these marches. I want to ask you a couple of things. I want to ask you about how you go about mobilizing people for these marches. I want to ask about the motivation of people to get involved. And I want to ask about the freedom to march, whether there are clampdowns or restrictions on protests and petitioning. So if we could start with how you mobilize and it sort of inspire people to get involved. Is it hard to do that?
So yes, I'm a climate advocate in Liberia, and like me, there are many other climate advocates, and there are other many there are many other youth advocates,
Right.
and we have like a network. You understand?
Hmm.
So and also we inspire a lot of people, and a lot of people are being affected by climate change. You
Right.
understand?
Right.
So a lot of people want to take action because
Okay.
they are feeling the brunt effects. Some of them are not a member of any environmental organizations. Some of them are just ordinary people, but because they themselves are being affected, they join the
I
march.
see.
So we
So,
organize, yeah, like many environmental groups, youth groups, and environmental organizations, NGOs, community-based organizations, just basically civil society organizations. We gather together and with this goal and this mindset that environmental sustainability need to be a priority in Liberia, and the protection of the Upper Guinea forest must be a priority, and it should be for conservation. And also, while we are advocating for the protection of the forest, we are also advocating that the government of the Republic of Liberia will be able to allocate climate finance for indigenous people that live in these communities,
right.
to be able to allocate climate finance and to also be able to allocate budget, to be able to allocate budget for the livelihood of these people, to ensure
Mm.
that too, they too can be able to have an alternative. You understand? Because by them conserving the forest, by them not cutting down the trees, the forest is contributing to our entire world, to make the world a
Of
better
course.
place.
Of
The forest
safeguard. Yes.
is contributing to mitigating the global carbon
Yes.
emission. So
Yes.
therefore, there should be a payment to those people, to those indigenous people that live in these communities.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Danger money, really, for business as usual. Um, Okay. So people are incentivized because they're feeling the pain and the impacts of firsthand of climate change. So there's no better motivation than watching your home being flooded or your city or your community. Um, and so the other
Certainly,
thing right, and the other thing you said there is you're mobilizing existing community groups to come together. So where people
certainly,
gather, you're going to them and then pulling them into an even bigger gathering, right?
certainly, yeah,
Which is
certainly.
powerful. Okay, and so
But
you
by
and the
galvanizing, we galvanize different groups, and we also galvanize different people that want to make change, people that are affected, people
yes,
that are into conservation, people that are into climate change adaptation, mitigation, people that are
yes,
into youth, gender issues. Everyone is affected by climate change.
right,
So we galvanize groups from CSO from all around, all spectrums, to
right.
ensure that our voices are heard.
And when you march, what is the mood? Is there optimism and hope? Do you march in silence? Do you march to song? What does it sound and feel like?
For in Liberia, there's freedom of speech. That's one good thing about the resilience of the present day Liberia. There's freedom of speech. There's freedom of um, movement. There's freedom of association. Freedom of
Okay.
gathering. So
Mhm.
we have the right as civil society organizations to speak out our mind. Sometimes it's not an easy thing because most time we march in the scorching hot sun, and and sometimes we also march but we don't get response from the government. Sometimes um there are a lot of challenges because sometimes people tell you that you cannot go to the Capitol building at this time. You cannot be able to go to the executive mansion. There are a lot of bureaucracy. So sometimes vivid, the vivid picture I want to send as a united voice can be tried to. Sometimes people try to split them by not giving us the platform. Sometimes the police they tell us that we cannot go to certain national areas or want to gather because we know those national areas are where our national leaders
So
are.
I want to ask about the 1 million coconut trees. Um, who's going to plant those? Is it the same mobilized community that are going to get involved and plant? Is it school children? Who's going to do it?
A vision for protection, for the protection of coastal communities,
Mm.
vulnerable coastal communities from the effects of climate change. So it's something that also what will also galvanize people from all walks of life
Okay.
because climate change is everyone's business. Everyone is affected by climate change.
Right.
But we do it in a way where we work along with the community leadership, we work along with civil society groups, we work
Yes.
along with sometimes we invite members of the government,
Yes.
sometimes we invite um people from the United Nations, sometimes we invite international partners,
Right.
you understand?
Hmm.
But it's everyone's business. So we all have to work together to ensure that we achieve climate action.
Mm. Right. And might you think about twinning with cities on the opposite side of the planet to you? Would that be something that would help us to solidify as a global community looking out for one another? Is that something that you might see on your radar when you come back?
That is very important. That I say I know as we know there have been twin cities around the world, and Liberia also have twin cities with Dayton, Ohio, in the United States of America. Liberia have twin city with Taipei, Taiwan. These are the two cities that Liberia are twin with, and these are for Taiwan. Taiwan is hugely affected by climate change, as we know, and
Yes.
there are a lot of storm surges, and there are a lot of coastal flooding that go on in Taiwan. You
Right.
understand?
Yes.
So it would be very, very great for cities to join together. You understand?
Yes.
To work together and countries
Yes.
to work together to ensure that we
Yes.
solidify our action. You
Yes.
understand? To tackle
Yes.
climate change.
Wonderful. It's a beautiful vision and noble work, and I applaud you and your other co-founder and your community for the stance that you're taking. Ah, you're
Thank you.
back. Back. Okay. Oh no. Oh, you're back. Oh, please come back. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, you're back. I thought I'd lost you. So, okay. So, um, let's record the closing segment to our interview. I think it's been fascinating and impactful, and I think all the information that we need to get out is in there. So we'll just go into the closing segment now, all right?
All right.
So in three, two, one. So, Charles, it has been a fascinating conversation. I think everyone will have learned so much about Liberia, a bit about the rich and interesting history, and certainly the risks that you face now, and what your community and what you yourself and your co founder are doing. So, if you had an ask of the Circularist viewers, what would it be? What would you like people to do? Do you have a website they can go to? What would you like people to do and respond with?
So, firstly, thanks to all of the viewers that view the Circularists, and I will encourage every one of you to please take actions for our planet because as we see all around the world, climate change is affecting every country. There is no exclusion, whether you are black, whether you are white, whether you are Asian, whether you are mulatto. I encourage all of us around the world to take little actions for our planet. And also, you can check for Beach Liberia on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and also check for Beach. I will give her the link where you can read a story about for Beach Liberia that is published by articles. You can also read about for Beach Liberia. Thank you all. And remember that climate change is everyone's business. So let us all join together. Let's fight and combat the global warming situation in our world.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Charles, thank you so much for joining me on the Circularist. It's been an absolute honor to talk to you. I'm so inspired by your work and your journey, and I wish you every success. And it would be great to check back in the future, you know, in the near future, to just get a progress update and any news. All right.
Certainly, certainly. Thank you
All right.
very much for
Thank you.
affording me the platform to amplify my voice and to also share the story of Liberia. And I want to tell the world that the current generation of Liberia, we are change makers, not child soldiers.
Ah, wonderful.
We
On
are
that
change
note,
makers, not child soldiers.
beautiful. What a lovely note to finish on. So hopeful.
Thank you
Wonderful.
very much.
Oh,
Have a good day.
all right, Chelsea. Thank you very much. Chat to you soon. All right. Priceless. This has been priceless. I'm going to stop the recording now.